Hello and welcome to yet another Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Conansson and I'm joined once again by Wick. Hello Wick.
Hello everyone.
Today we have a very special guest. We have someone working at Riot, a Rioter, and plinq is joining us today. Glad to have you here.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming and for answering some of our questions that we've prepared before. And for you, we have some, for the viewers, we have our questions written down and you can follow along. And sometimes we'll switch back and forth between the game and the questions. And I'm very excited to see and hear what we can learn about our Riot dev here. So first of all, plinq, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and maybe also what cards did you design?
I've been a card designer on many card games actually, probably more than most of the other devs. Just in terms of the sheer number of different ones. Probably I've worked on like a dozen plus, and I've like designed or co-designed about 4 or 5. So I came to Riot partially. So I have a lot of, and almost all of it cards. So like I barely design other games. We've designed other games, but mainly professionally I've worked on card games. So, So I came to Riot because Andrew Yip, who was the director for Runeterra, was a friend of mine from back when we both worked at Upper Deck on card games then. And so I knew him and I trusted him, which is a lot to say in the game industry. And so I said, I saw that I knew he worked for Riot, and I saw that they came out with a game, and I asked him, is that you? Because I hadn't talked to him in a while. We weren't like best buds or anything. We were just good, just friends from work. And he said, yeah. So I played it, and it's really the first digital TCG I've actually really enjoyed. Sorry, Hearthstone. I played other ones, but I didn't like them that much. I never really wanted to work on one until this one. So I'm in San Diego, and Riot's in LA. So as much as I've always really loved Riot's sort of generous models for for games, I never thought I would have a chance to work up there because my wife's committed down here in San Diego with her job.
Yeah.
So, but because of COVID, I could work remotely, and so I'm like, all right, I'll just take a flyer on this, work for a year, see if they'll hire me. They did,
Nice.
and I just love it. It's a really fantastic team. I really like working on the game. And then from there, I was a temporary position, but I just applied for permanent. And now I just commute periodically up to LA. I'm going to go up tomorrow. So yeah, it's a 4-hour commute. But still.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
But you mainly work in design then, or do you also like life balance cards?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
You mainly work in design then on new cards, or do you also balance cards?
Yeah. So we all sort of like wear all the hats inside.
Makes sense.
So I do. Just depends on what's needed. Sometimes recently I've been doing live balance patches. I did a couple of the small releases, like I did Jace and all those cards. And also did like Akshan in that package. Although both times like Steve was, because he was the lead, was a very influential on sort of what came out with Akshan and all 13 cards of Akshan. That's me.
Yeah.
And then most of the cards in that package are probably came from me one way or another. And then I also worked a lot on Gwen. I worked on a lot of Cultists and Kane, that kind of thing. But it's these are I can say I worked on this, I worked on that, but like there's like a lot of input going in on these cards. So it's a little, it can be a little misleading to say I'm the designer of such and such.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, basically Jace, Akshan, a little Gwen, some Kane, some other people coming up.
Yeah, I was really excited when I found out that you were one of the main designers for Akshan. That's definitely one of my favorite cards. I'm always on Twitter ranting about how well designed this card is and how valuable it is for the game and how
Yeah.
this such a what looks like a very simple, 2 mana 2/2 quick attack just adds so much versatility to that region.
Yeah.
So thank you for designing Akshan so well.
Thanks. Yeah, that was the goal for us. Really was, and what's really interesting is like Akshan and Viego. That was a really accelerated design. Like we designed those in short order, like much less time than normal.
Oh,
for
really?
design.
Oh, because of the event.
Yeah. It was because it was a little release. You know,
Mhm.
it wasn't a set release. It was, in some ways it's easy. In some ways the smaller releases, because you're not trying to balance like a whole bunch of like new keyword mechanics or all the cards against each other. We had some opportunities there that it was a little easier to go quick. That was true for Jace too, which was basically just a special release to go with the Arcane and Path of
Mhm.
Champion stuff. So
Mhm.
that had a lot of constraints because that Path of Champion stuff was aimed at new players. So Jace had to be quite simple.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, there was
That's really
recently
cool.
recently discussion on Twitter if you should nerf Akshan, and then Drizov came in, shout out to Drizov, and just said, no, all the other...
I think Akshan's always been over. He kind of just hides in plain sight and never really bothers you, despite So it's probably too much value and always has been too much value, more or less. But no one ever gets angry. So I think if I think of like what I love about this design is he never pisses you off for some reason, despite his kind of like personality is a little
Boisterous.
yeah, exactly. It seems like he should, but he never really gets on people's nerves, basically until equipment, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So I think with equipment, people have wondered. So it's possible. I'm sensitive to the needs. If he starts breaking our metrics, then yeah, we'll have to do something. There isn't a lot to do. He's so little, so most likely it would be Quest, I would guess. But no, that will come up when we do it. He's not
Yeah.
he's not headed for Doom at the moment.
Nice. But yeah, great design. I love it. And I agree with Drizov that other champions should be like Akshan, that you are happy to go up against him. And great design.
Yeah.
I think what the biggest lesson I got out of Akshan afterwards, not when I was doing it, because I understand the game a lot better now than since I made him, actually, in terms of design. The biggest lesson is like both low drops and high drop champions need to do something other than be on the board.
Yeah.
So Akshan is only at 2 health, and that that's usually not a great thing for a champion. A lot of times that, like, we moved Draven to 2 health and he's like more or less out of the game. So it's a cost up from this, but like different champs get away with it better. But like I think if you look at the ones that are successful both at the high and the low end, they provide value on play. So Akshan, even if you kill Akshan, he's left the palace behind, and you can frequently use the palace to get him back,
Yeah.
So and that was really the dream, because it's really like an Indiana Jones fantasy with Akshan. That's the model. Actually, it was Indiana Jones. I think they used to all be themed that way too. Like on the internal playtest names, it was like the Temple of Doom, and like so.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, great.
That's really funny.
Yeah. So that was the big lesson, that you could he could have an effect even if you killed him. So that was, I think. And if you look at there's some champs like that, like Zoe frequently has value when she drops. Like you can drop Zoe kind of freely, because she's going to draw you a card and kind of put you on that program. So she doesn't need to survive. She's also 1 cost, which is a slightly different, barriers.
Yeah.
Great.
That's cool.
So maybe let's move on to our next question here. Now we know who you are. What is your game design background? We kind of talked about that already. card game player background. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on the other card games you've designed. You talked about like 4 you actively designed.
Yeah, sure. So so there's a Magic player, old Magic player. His name is Brian Hacker, and he was like for many, many years we designed all our stuff together. And so this was true at Upper Deck. We were friends before that, because I would help him practice for Magic Pros. I only went to one Magic Pro myself, but he was a regular, so I would help him make decks for the pros back in the day. And he and I designed most of our games together. And so for Upper Deck, we designed 3 games. One was Shaman King. So that show got resurfaced recently, which is kind of cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another was built also around a show called Kiba, and that one only released in Japan. And then another one where we built the show around it. You can sense that there's a theme back in the day with TCG. Is called Huntic, and that one I think had a very limited release, although it was released. The one in Japan ran for about 5 sets. Shaman King ran for 1 set, and basically, and then they subsequently used the same game engine to do a game for Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Pirates of the Caribbean. Believe it or not, those were all in the same basic engine, though not completed.
Wait, there's an Avatar, The Last Airbender card game?
I sort of made it, yeah.
Oh wow, I need to hold on. How strong is Sokka?
How strong is Sokka? I think Sokka is teamwork. That's a real. So Shaman King and that family. I'd have to really go into it to explain it.
Okay.
So I won't go into too much detail, but I will tell you some weird features about them. So Shaman King, the thing that's the most unusual about Shaman King is it has no hand.
Interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Just top decking. Yeah.
Sounds hilarious.
So it's a very what's interesting about the game is it probably, like, if you think of a game like Magic, maybe it has like 5 levels of play, or say, where each level can kind of safely beat the next level. You know, in terms of, maybe it has more, like, or Go might have like 15 or something, right? Shaman King had like maybe 3 or 4, but a good player would basically never lose ever to a good player. And the reason for that is you're making, I think largely, is you are playing kind of, it's a game that's a little bit, because it's not in hand, a lot of the decision, and you're making maybe like 40 choices on cards during a game, so you get a lot more micro choices. So it usually tends to be a little more skill testing, but not support quite that same high level of play. Kind of probably hard to explain this without actually seeing this game, but that's kind of a funny feature of it. It's almost more like backgammon. It's like kind of
okay.
So it's like you were playing against the probabilities of your own deck, I guess. It would be a weird way of describing it, but I don't know. I talking about a game we can't see is probably not.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Okay. Victor, was your question? Do you want to have any follow-up, or should we move on to the next one?
No, I think that was like a great breakdown of like your history. I think it's really exciting that when you encountered Legends of Runeterra, it was so good that you just had to work on it. And that gives me a lot of hope, because I think it's really cool to hear that. Obviously, you want the developers to be as passionate, as excited about the game as you are, right?
Yeah.
And so it's good. It's really wonderful to hear that.
Yeah.
I think I would not say that is the case everywhere I've worked, but for here it really is. People are almost entirely super devoted. It's the reason why I like the job, honestly.
Yeah.
Everyone is trying to do their best at making this game work for the players. Really.
You love to hear it.
Yeah. So, however our best may be.
Okay. Okay. So then, next question. What major unique design philosophies do you think LoR embodies? For example, life balance, color economy. Question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of a follow-up.
So, yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, I think one of the I actually always hated packs, despite the fact that I worked on like seven different trading card
Yeah.
games. I hated packs. I hated the pack model. I don't like I don't. I mean, there's some slight excitement of the sort of gambling of opening a pack, which is kind of fun. I like drafting from packs,
Yeah.
but the idea that the pieces are going to be very unavailable, or I'm just going to have to blow a lot of money to get the pieces is what do you got in your mouth? I really don't love, and that was one of the major things that really attracted me to LoR, as I mentioned earlier. Like, it's just like we can have these players from all over the world, places where no one is making a lot of money necessarily, but they can still be completely all in on playing, which is really fantastic. I think probably one thing that also really stands out for me is the quality of the art and the narration. Just the production value is quite high in LoR, which I think does a lot of work in terms of making the experience really strong. I would say those two are. I mean, there's other games with high quality, but I really feel like ours is the best. I honestly, when I look at people who I'm awed by their talent, it's actually like the concept artists. There's one concept artist. I'm like, oh, okay, you are so much more talented than everyone else here. It's terrifying. Like
The art is so great.
That part, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of it is just stuff that you normally get from Riot or that they're trying to do, but I really feel like like the fact that it's really focused on players and try on their experience of playing. Almost all the devs play, so we're part of the live experience, and so we're trying to make that as good as possible for everybody. So those that and I worked on mainly physical card games. That ability to and to aggressively balance and mix up the environment as we're going, right, as opposed to just making new cards that do it, right, which would be trying to sell you a bunch of things, right. That's also, it's part of the same vision, I think, all those things. I really do like it. It's a relief to work on after working on the other card games. I'll say honestly.
It's really interesting that you use the word relief, because it does sound as though the specific philosophies that Riot has for this game kind of enables developers to be a little bit more engaged with it. And I don't know. I think it's really interesting to see how the Legends of Runeterra, outlook is very different from the other experiences that you've had. I was expecting it to be different, but not like that different.
So I don't really love collectability per se, which is kind of funny because I've only worked on I've worked primarily on collectible products.
Right.
I don't have a collector in me, and so my experience with the games that we make is really often, I want some cards, I just type them up, print them out, or for Runeterra, I just code them in, and there's some cards, and we have them. And I like how our players' experience isn't that much different from that.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Yeah. I mean, it's possible we should monetize a little more, but I do love the accessibility. We're making kids games, and I'm like, what would it cost a kid to make this deck that I'm playing? It's some ugly thing, And you're selling, in packs, you're selling something that's like, it's like psychologically addictive, right? Like that is the hook, right? You're selling gambling,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was hard to swallow. Although I played professional poker too, so that was, I've already made my peace with swallowing some of these things, but it's a relief not to do it anymore. Yeah.
Really cool.
Okay, What are the design philosophies you use when working on? Already heard you said early cards and late cards have to do something.
So I guess if what do I like to think about? So a lot of times it kind of depends on where in the process you are, because sometimes people say, "Hey, I'm working on this pattern. Can you find a card that does this kind of thing?" And then you're tinkering to make a very specific card. But like in terms of philosophy, in terms of just like sort of what I want and how I'd like to think about it, probably the main focus for me is playability. Okay, and sort of like yeah, it's sort of like, and the best way into that is like, why do I want this in my hand? Like, why do I want this in my hand? Why would I put this in the deck? Why?
Yeah.
Why am I excited to see this? Right? Why don't I mulligan this every time? Because I was forced to play it. Right? And so that's probably the number one thing that I'm thinking about usually is like, what is exciting about this? And then but what's interesting is like a different way into exactly the same point, I guess, would be to say, how can I give too much here?
Yeah.
Right? How can I make this card overrate? Right?
Yeah.
What is the context in which I can make this card both feel and be slightly too good? Right? Well, I can't just make it better than the other cards, flat, usable in all conditions, right? I mean, most of the time, you can kind of get away with that. Once every so often, you can make a card that's a little just better, right? Or especially if you hide it like Reggie. Reggie
man.
I knew so truth be told, I knew it was probably better, but
yeah,
we were giving something similar in a couple places, so it didn't seem better, right? But it was right. Too good. So that card was just kind of straight overrate. But it was even better, and sort of like the idea behind the card in some sense is as part of Jace's package. And so the way that we can make that card better than normal would be to put it in the context that you wouldn't always be trying to achieve. So one would be costing these big spells. So I guess if you look at a card like Hextech Handler, which is my favorite art, by the way, if you look at that card, he's so awesome. Yeah, there we go. I loved this card. I made this card for Aleko, who used to be on GAT and now is working for Hearthstone. Unfortunately, like Aleko is super talented, and he really wanted tech to be a thing. So I made Hextech Handler. So here, Handler kind of requires a couple things to be true about your deck before he's really great. One, you're running some tech cards. The other is you're probably going to play a 6-cost spell. Okay, it's possible. I think this card is probably a little over certainly over if you're doing those things, right? So in the decks that it lives, you can't just put it in any deck, right? But in the decks that it lives, you are excited to see Hextech Handler, right? When you're playing Heimerdinger Jace and you get Hextech Handler, you're like, or even potentially even Lux, right? You're like, this is awesome, and this sort of brings up a couple other things that I like to do when I'm designing. And in some ways, this is one of my favorite cards I've designed because it does a lot of different things. One is there's all these tech cards that had been kind of accumulating. None of them were any good. Right? So Production Surge was no good. Saw no play. Adaptatron, a really interesting card. No play. Heimerdinger, not really any play at the time. Okay?
No.
So how can we wake all these cards up? Right? How can I make it that suddenly with one or two cards, we can make it so all these cards are brought to life, right? And so, because we knew that Jace would probably be a decent match with Heimerdinger, given Flash of Brilliance, and that Heimerdinger's sweet spot for casting a spell is 6, because he gets the elusive unit, really.
Yeah.
So with one card, we can tie Heimer to Jace. we can wake up Production Surge, which now is really good with Jace.
Yeah, it is.
We can wake up Adaptatron, right? Like, so this card anchors all that together. But if and so basically, Hextech Handler is answering a question: how can I be too good? And I'm too good if you put me together with this other package in some form or the other, And
Right.
So, yeah, and so that's basically the vision for me. It's like, how can I make this too good? Like, how can I make this card too good? Is basically the vision. Sometimes you can do it a little generally, like you're showing that there's a part of the game that people underappreciated. Sometimes you do it in relationship to existing cards. Sometimes you try to bridge it back to cards that were already there and make them too good too. So that's the idea.
I love Hex the Handle. It's the only thing I always was annoyed by is you have the Grab Scuttlers, and they are not attack. Despite obviously
I know. So we got Crushbot in there as tech. I feel like the Scuttler should probably be tech too. I don't know. We'll see. The problem is tech's good enough now that I'm not sure we need it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
We went far enough, Crushbot doesn't even make it. That was just for Aleko, even though he was gone at the time. He was always wanted it to be tech.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So let's go to the next question. How does Riot playtest cards? That you just program them in, you hit up your other dev and say, hey, I have this great idea, do it out.
So mainly we playtest in Google Meet. All right, even if we're all in the office, that's how we do it, and we're usually playing on client. So at the very early stages, we might not have implemented the cards, but mostly speaking, by the time we're playtesting something, we'll have implemented it, and then we'll just all get into a meeting, and then we'll play, using sort of new decks. Sometimes we'll play it against old decks, depending on the balance stage. So it's kind of those playtests can have like stuff at different levels of completion. So you might be playing against something kind of incredibly too strong, too weak. Like you have to kind of balance it as you're going. But normally, it's all the devs in a Google Meet on one of our client branches. That's like our in the future. And that's basically what we're doing. Just playing the cards there. Then we decide what we like, and then we'll make some implementation changes and come back and do it again. That's really the job in a lot of ways. If we're doing like a live balance, that'll probably be like a separate one because we need to really test those changes against the current environment. For the most part, sometimes we'll also test the live balance stuff against the stuff that's coming up soon.
Oh,
but
really?
I can talk about that later. Yeah, well, we have to, right? Like,
yeah,
like you don't want to fix something and then break it in like a month, like badly, right? So,
right.
That part's always really invisible to players when we have to make changes that they don't know why.
Yeah, I noticed that like landmarks. It's really interesting to see changes, especially if you're like into what.
Yeah.
2 months later, you're like, that's why.
Bandletree. Bandletree had to take a nerf because of Weapon Masters. We knew it was broken, right? Like, so we knew, and like Bandletree is like always a slightly frustrating card for players. Like, it was never really breaking, like a too severe win rate, but with a card like that where it feels so non-interactive, we don't like it to get too high, basically. See also Targon's Peak. But
yeah.
but I mean, it's okay. It's a problem. It's like I kind of like have like there are people who are really just going to enjoy Targon's Peak, right? Like we kind of want to make room for those people, but they can't be that you fire up a game of LoR and the first thing you hit is like Targon's Peak, and you're like the next one. I mean, it's just like, and they just like randomly high side with the Aurelian Soul, and you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
I think what's funny is when you're playing against these things, like with Targon's Peak, I think beating them with your own high cards is one of the greatest satisfactions. I had a really fun game with Red Gwen where I got like Eternal Dancers down and then harrowing the next turn. We're both
Oh wow.
so that was tasty.
Yeah.
So funny
I
if you
love
like
that.
scouts as well and then just like play your zero cost Quinn and then you zero ready afterwards.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So sometimes there's stuff that's hidden, so we make
Mhm.
changes. We were looking to move on Bandle Tree. So when we sensed that it was doing a little too well, a little too much play, a little too high percentage,
Mhm.
we said that now's the time because we have to move on it anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Kind of nailed. Yeah, you just take care of it in the now and in the future, and then
Right.
people don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
So you guys just kind of jump into game and then just grind out a bunch of matchups. Like that's.
It can vary. Like
Mhm.
sometimes we'll dedicate people to playing decks if we want to make sure something's getting coverage.
Mhm.
Like it's really, but largely we're just in a branch that has the future cards
Mhm.
that are implemented. Sometimes a little rough in the implementation. That's not with any. That's with like no art or anything.
Yeah.
We don't have that's all later, which makes sense
Gotcha.
because we're not sure where this is going to be a card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then
Okay.
we just so we're banging blanks basically. They're all just look like just blank cards.
That's really
I've been
funny.
doing like I'm always so excited when I see art because 90% of what I play is not art. So I'm always excited
Yeah.
when the art is there. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. I would say next
Mhm.
what to talk about is, have you ever been sad if a card you designed didn't competitive play? Like time
Every time.
every time.
Every time? Oh no.
Every time. I mean, not majorly sad. So, like, for example, like Ruined Reckoner. I thought for sure Ruined Reckoner was a really good card. Now apparently he's
Yeah.
playing, but initially he saw nothing. He was in a box by himself. So maybe he was just waiting for the right environment. Shock Blast also.
Oh my god.
I thought Shock Blast was like we were worried about putting Shock Blast like this. Like it was there was discussions. And it's just slow. I mean it sees play, right?
Yeah,
But
it's. I think it's a solid card.
Yeah.
I don't think
yeah,
it's like terrifying to see.
yeah, it's not a staple. It's more if you're doing this kind of thing or you're very if you're really trying to have some control, then you
Mhm.
do. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really care. Like, someone's, as long as someone's having fun, I don't really mind. But like, yeah, I aim a lot for because I aim at playability. I'm always hoping people will actually play my card.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever an interaction or deck in the history of LoR that you were surprised that surprised you? For example,
Yes.
Ezreal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Ascended. I do
Oh.
not. Ascended was fascinating. Before we fixed it all the way, and we fixed it some. There was a time where it had a 43% win rate and an over 16% play rate. This
Yeah.
was crazy to me. Like,
Yeah.
wow, how much fun must Ascended be? You don't even have to win. You just have to
Right.
feel like it. Just every so often you get to see the movie and everybody
No.
goes crazy and that was it. So I thought it was a real lesson. I was like, what? You remember I was talking about how, just the whole idea that your deck went crazy and you got to go take them all up, or use the deck. I mean, it's not even the deck. I think it's just all the L3 versions of those champs are so kooky.
Yeah.
Just that experience was enough so that even if you were getting paid off half the time right? It was still worth playing for you, right? Like, and there was probably people who were good, right? So that means there were people who were probably under 40% win rate, still just playing it, So that was amazing. I thought that was amazing. Normally this straightens out. It was like multiple weeks before that fell. So it was something about that package that was so alluring that despite the fact that you weren't winning games, you still wanted to do it. So yeah, that was incredible to me. Yeah. All I will say.
From my own experience, I always picked the Sandisk in Expedition. I always wanted to work, and even if I lost like half of the runs, I just like Xerath level 3 runs. It motivated me so much. It was incredible.
No, it's good to know. I mean, it's nice when it's nice when there's an alternative to just competition that's carrying it. So yeah, no, it's a great success. I think true. It's a great success for Mark Sasserath, who's I think he's switched teams, but yeah, he's a fantastic designer.
Any other
that's really funny.
Surprising interactions?
With the interactions, it's funny. We normally know most of the interactions. What we get surprised about is like people like figuring out how to make them actually work and do well. It's like it's not like because the world builds better decks than we do in house. Even though we got like some real talented people for building decks. We have multiple pro players, or people would be pros, Steve's like a Hall of Fame Magic player. Frank and Aaron are both like brilliant players. I'm okay. I mean, I'm not really. I'm glad I can play them competitively. Let's put it that way. I'm glad it's not for money. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's just really good, just the community will win. So sometimes there'll be interactions that we know about that we think are probably okay, and sometimes they won't be. Just because someone will find the right home for it. So it's like I think largely we spot most of the interactions. Like there isn't one that I can think of that I was just surprised happened, but for example, like timelines. We knew timelines weapon master is a thing, right? But like how good is this thing? We never had a great timelines deck, I think, in house. So we let it through, more or less.
I think
I heard this once from another Rioter that they said the Rioters would playtest for 10,000 hours. First 10,000 people playing the game, 1 hour would be the same kind of.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. We're not going to win. So a lot of times it's like partially because we can live bounce. Like when that was like physical cards, we had to play test like 10 times as much to get any security just because we can't change it,
Right.
But with this, because because not only are we willing to balance, but our community likes us to do it, right? We can be a little more aggressive, and just catch things as they come.
That's really cool.
Okay, next question. Hot topic in the community. What do you think about infinite decks, like the famous Action Infinite deck that's draw cards over and over?
So when Steve and I made Akshan, I put this power on Akshan. I'm pretty sure. Who knows exactly. When I found a power. So we knew that we were introducing combo to a game that had very little combo. Like none really, or if it was there, it was very small. So we knew we were putting in an element. So we deliberately put in an element to pay off a certain type of card gamer. So this was intentional, but we didn't want it to be too strong because I think a lot of people are playing this because they're not wanting to play, Yu-Gi-Oh, right. So that's one thing, and the other thing is there's some limits and some frustration possible just because of the interface,
Right.
So I think where this deck is problematic to me is interface stuff, mainly. So that's the reason why we, I don't know if that's the only reason, but like that's the reason why we can't let it get too good or too prevalent, because it's just frustrating. To deal with. I click back. No one just wants to do it. So you can see this deck the deck is similar in a lot of ways to Ascended. Yeah. It has about a 42% win rate, and still people play it, even though it doesn't win too much. But no one plays it at 15%. We'd probably have to nerf Fountain of Power out of existence.
Yeah, 15%.
Yeah, or fix something else about it.
Yeah.
But it also, the other thing is, in order to put this type of power in the game, as opposed to something like Magic, we gated it really deep in Auction. You have to dedicate a number of cards just to get access to Fountain of Power. Maybe not too many, but that means that's essentially intrinsically weakening what else you would like to do with a combo. So that's the strategy there. Combo. The other thing is combo, from a developer standpoint, it takes way longer to develop safely, because you really don't want it to break.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Although with Azir Rally, I always said it's like a tempo combo deck, engines and state dancers.
Right.
Really relieving to hear that the decks won't be prevalent.
I don't think so. We'd have to fix it so there was some way that it wasn't the resolution nightmare, right? It wasn't frustrating. Also, we do try to preserve a lot of interactability, because I think most of our audience really likes that. So we'd have to make sure that other players had windows in that weren't deny. Okay, so we don't we don't view deny as a something that's holding things down. It can't work that way for us. We have to have other things that other ways in. So it'd almost certainly be unit based. Things like that. Something that you can actually stop, right? More easily.
Like Fountain of Power is slow. Just to show.
There you go.
Oh wow! Yeah, another click action.
Yeah, really. Oh yeah, even worse.
Even worse. Yeah, let's move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah. So I wanted to know, and we kind of talked about how live balance was one of the big benefits for digital card games and one of the things that you really liked about it. But are there any downsides to how frequently, or maybe not frequently, but how the current balance cadence for Legends of Runeterra? Like, are there any downsides to that, or things that you don't like?
So largely, I think it's good. Sometimes, basically, where the balance patch falls, we will not have access to as much data as we would like to make calls. So a lot and because of localization, we frequently need to make calls fairly early. So that it can go out in 13 languages, right? So right, like, it's not an instantaneous process, unfortunately. So so often we're waiting to the last minute and just like, what is happening? What can we really say about this environment? And we do have some ways of getting it, especially with numbers, last minute changes. But so I think some that's basically the main concern with it is we always want more information, especially before a meta settles, because like, you can buff something and someone finds a deck. And like, whoops, now there's a 56% deck, right, or something, where you've just improved it. You're like, oh, well, we got to emergency patch that now, or live with it for a week or something, and vice versa. And so I think it's mainly that you always want more time to make the call, but we also want to get the changes out as soon as possible. So it's like it's just a perpetual tightrope. But yeah, that's the main stress of it. I don't, you know, I don't know exactly what we could change about our rate that would improve that while keeping the meta fresh, you know. So this is, I think, our best guess is what works well, but you know, it's always going to have these downsides, especially when we have new releases right before we're patching or right after. So.
Yeah.
Because I think if you patch your life balance too often, like every week, players would notice the meta. Right now, there's a meta shift happening. That's settled.
Right.
I think it's a good schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've liked since we've changed to this. I feel like both player sentiment and the environment has been healthier as a rule.
Yeah, I agree.
Next topic: how do you decide which cards to nerf, what to?
So we touched on this a little, but basically it's I would say the largely data driven. Like largely we're looking at win rates for decks. We will have a sense that some cards were over. Like we know that the card is probably a little too strong, but it's really weird. It hasn't found a home in a deck that's being played too much or is winning too much or both. So that's the number one decision for ballparking a target. The other thing is the experience extremely frustrating, like to play against. So, and we will make changes based on this, and some of that will be based on social. Some of that will be based on survey, because we want to make sure we're talking to non-English players, basically. People who don't speak English. Like the problem with social is like you get a really exaggerated sense of who cares about what, you know. So,
that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you can also kind of spot it, like, and we're all playing, so we have the experience. Like you're playing against Kaisa, it's like I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm just stuck, right? I missed my window. I can't do anything. I'm just getting overrun. And now the funny thing is that like there was the Kaisa was probably never totally over on win rate relative to some of our decks. Like it was close. It's, you know, some it did very well in the high queues, which is also kind of marker that it was probably just too good. But the thing that really made it a hot target for us was it was just frustrating. I mean, it was, you know, and we felt that, you know, in terms of when we were playing against it ourselves, and you know, a lot of people complained, and you know, so it was a kind of a clear target to figure out something. And you know, the goal is always like I don't want to kick Kaisa to the curb completely, you know, if we can avoid it. So the goal is to try to find some ways to make it more interactive, pull the power down a notch, right? So, you know, and yeah, that was like the second skin change and the supercharge change, and eventually the Void Abomination change, just for good measure. But so that's the large thing. Like, but so the hardest part of that actually is, so let's say you know a deck is too good. So we knew that, you know, with Kaisa it's a little easy because we know that a lot of the frustration is around Kaisa and like second skinning Spell Shield and stuff onto her, so she's really kind of non-interactable. Like that was kind of clear. But there's other ones where it's not, like, you know, the deck is too good. For example, like the current Pirates is too good. This is not news, in case you're wondering. But the targets, who's the target? You know, like what do you change here? So that, yeah, well, that's probably a thought. Who knows? I'm not gonna do our changes.
Who knows?
But and what's funny is like the low cards are very, very hard to touch. I mean, Make It Rain, we nerfed that at one point, right? And it was unplayable, right? It not only was it unplayable, but Bilgewater was unplayable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the whole region went down the drain when we made this 3, right? Like, literally. Like, or maybe not 100%, but mostly it was just unplayed. So we have to kind of let it be too good, right? So then where do you pull the power out here? And the problem is too, you know, like let's say we're gonna hit like Grenadier, right? Like there he is. I'm not saying this is the premier target. I'm just saying we do. So we're gonna make Grenadier. Well, let's nerf him out, So he's like a 2-1 now, right? Just never going to see play. Okay? It's horrible. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
There's somebody waiting in Noxus to fill Grenadier's shoes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to solve the problem by knocking out Grenadier because the next best 2-drop in Nox is pretty good, you know? The next best 1-drop, pretty good. We're not going to solve it that way. We won't be able to get at it. And so it's kind of hard. It's like the hardest part is, even if we know this deck is problematic, what do you target? And you try to preserve as much life in the environment as possible. It's nice to have a good aggro deck. You know, it does good things for the game that people can't just dawdle for, you know, all the way through, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to have one deck pressuring the tempo, but we don't want that deck to be better than every other deck. You know? So sometimes we nerf something and people find out that they were using the wrong card all along. That's always my favorite.
Yeah, like Zeralia.
Yeah, it turns out you're like, oh, actually, this was just a better version.
Right.
It's very funny. It's a very, very funny. Yeah, so that's like the main process, and then we just test. And then we just test and see if it's hitting the goals that we want. You know, is it too much? And we reject a lot of changes. More than I would say more than half our changes get rejected. You know, at least we're going through. So we reject a lot of changes. Or keep spinning like where we want to hit this deck and we try like these cards and then we try those cards and you know and then we settle out at something that seems to get it to be about where we want it. You know.
Yeah.
That's cool to hear.
Have some more topics to cover.
Yeah.
How does the dev team process and view community feedback? So, like, do you consider Discord, Reddit, Twitter, or a program taking into consideration?
I think we look at everything, and like I said, we also do survey stuff just so that we're not just getting this like English bias, you know. So, but that's like a more of a slightly slower process, but we still try to get that feedback. I mean, I think this is important for all of us. It's part of the reason I think a lot of the devs are more on Twitter than they were before, like, and some on Reddit too. Like, because part of what we're trying to gauge is player sentiment and satisfaction, right? This is a very good resource for it, and you know, especially with you know, and it doesn't matter if the person's an influencer or just someone who talks a lot about lore. I mean, I personally follow tons of people, you know, whether it doesn't matter if they're Masters players or not, you know, like if they're I try to follow a lot of the lore Twitter community just to get a read, you know, like it's not gonna govern every choice that we make, but if, you know, if people are feeling sour about something, well, we should look at it, you know, like
fully.
You know, yeah, like maybe they're wrong, you know, but like we should. I want to know, right? Like you know, like so sometimes you can change something that will remove the problem that's different from what they think it is. But a lot of times, I think people are, you know, it's funny. Like I remember I was reading a bunch of game dev conversations, and they were very corrective about like you shouldn't tell game devs what to fix. You know, just tell them there's a problem and let the masters work. You know, I'm like, this is ridiculous. There are many people talking about. I mean, I'm for one, I'm in a card game, so okay, fine. You know, card games is probably we're closer. Card games, the devs are probably closer to the community because we're also, you know, like you know how the pieces interact. You know, so like you know, it's like there isn't much hidden here, but. You know, it's just kind of ridiculous. Like, there are people who understand competitive play better than I do, right? That are talking about how this is too strong, and other people who understand competitive play better than I do are also saying it's probably too strong. I mean, I feel like I should look, you know? I should put my game dev hat on and say, well, what do you know?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Chances are they know quite a bit, you know? So
and I think it's like the right approach that you look at the community feedback, you listen to it, but it's not like don't like blindly follow it. Because even if a deck is not like problematic or something, you can't just tell the players, well, just keep playing and don't complain about it because
Shut up and play.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really view that distance as very real. I don't know. Maybe that's a you're right. We can't. People aren't always exactly right, and sometimes there's reasons for things that are invisible. That not everyone will have all the information. Why is this true? Well, I can't really tell you or talk about it. But but aside from that, no, I'm gonna pay attention if someone, certainly if a lot of people are saying something like, well, let's look at this.
That's really cool to hear.
So we have 2 more questions, and through. First one is, I actually made a Twitter post about this. Like, what do you think about introducing activated abilities or landmarks on the board and can activate 2 mana to do something?
Yeah. I would say largely I'm for it. So we do incur a little bit of a complexity burden from it. And I think simplicity is always nice in a card game. So that's probably the main cost, but it would allow us to give permanents considerable more texture than they currently have. So in that sense, that is, so we don't have to put their power in, on either an aura, something that's always true, a play effect, or just their keywords and stats. So it gives us another way of nuancing the cards, which is, from a designer standpoint, that's great. I don't know how it would work with mobile, but so there'd have to be some good UI solves and stuff for this. But I just as a designer or as a player, I am excited about the possibility space. But there's probably some complexity and practical considerations for whether we can do it. I suspect it'll happen someday, just because we'll need the space.
Nice.
But I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know though. You don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know. You don't know.
Saying, we need the space. Probably. At some point we'll need the space just to give you the variety. That's fun. But who knows? Maybe we can keep going down this route. I do like the simplicity of. I do like simple stuff. So that's probably the only competing tension for me internally. Is I love cards that have like 1 or 2 words. It's just beautiful. And like I look at Yu-Gi-Oh cards sometimes. I'm here. Yu-Gi-Oh. If you like Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm sorry, I don't like your game. But and I'm like, there's literally like 2 paragraphs of text in this card.
Well, the auction has like how many? Conansson,
I counted this, yes. I got in an argument with someone on Discord, I think, and they said LoR is not complex, and I counted all the cards in action. All the cards in action, or the words in action are more than the most wordy BO card. So.
Oh yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. I think it's fair to throw it at me too, because I'm responsible for this monstrosity. But in terms of what I have to digest at any given time, this will be my case, right? I really need to only know a few things. He makes this thingy, right? And when it advances, I'll get some other thingy, and then I can deal with that then, right? Yeah. I don't have to conditionally process all the information at the time. I just need to know I'd like him to hit or I'd like to target something. That's it. Eventually it counts down and then we're done. So. But yeah, you're right. So there's really, how can you get access to the intricacy without having it all in 2 paragraphs on a single card and then having 9 of those cards? Like how do you do that? Like I don't know. So that's my thing for activated abilities. I do find them attractive as a designer. So it would be nice if we could do it at some point.
I have to tell you my story with Akshan when he released. Because I opened the client and it was like, look at the new cards, and it was so long, I literally didn't look at it. Then it just faced in the next game and was like, he makes this palace, and then he makes draws a card, and then he makes another palace. Nice, I figured it out. And it's like, And then
Yeah.
it's like you said.
Yeah.
When I was testing it internally and someone looked at the card fan, they're like, "What is going? What in the world is going on? How did you make this?" I mean, Lord knows it has to be one of the most expensive cards ever made too. But like
Yeah.
just so much art, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the spells aren't too bad for cost, but anyway. But so I'm like, actually, just play it. Just play it. Just don't ignore all that nonsense.
Yeah.
Play it.
Yeah.
And it's really, it doesn't really. My feeling was it doesn't really. It doesn't have the simplicity of Jace, but yeah.
Right.
Jace is simple, but also has a lot of hate to him.
Yeah, I think Jace is it really well. Yeah, I was gonna say that the complexity of the cards in Legends of Runeterra are so mitigated by just how the client organizes information and presents it to you. It's just like you said, you play Legends of Runeterra and you learn Legends of Runeterra, and I think that is all based on the UI UX of the game, and I think that that's what enables more complexity to come through cards without a novel being written on it.
Right.
And so I think that's definitely one of the strengths of Legends of Runeterra that I've seen over other games, of course. So I think that was a good example.
That is fine to teach. What is Frostbite? How about the yellow cards and show? Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
That is always nice.
The tooltips are OP for sure.
Okay. Maybe like the last question, can I just talk about it? Because I get asked this a lot as the person that made it the unofficial. I often get the comment, try to do that. Try to write the rulebook and write every.
We've decided we don't want to take your job away. I would feel so sad if just to the serious answer is I asked people about this. The person who does all the rule stuff is John Mormon, who's like a fantastic person, a fantastic designer. It's basically like it's just a bit too difficult a project for us in some ways, honestly, because it's not only is it tracking what's true now, but it's also what's true in the future, and also keeping and updating all those translations at the same time is just a vast undertaking. So it's really that I think is what has prevented us from having an official rulebook, as nice as that would be. So yeah, it's just a bit too involved for us right now, I think, to aim at. I don't want to stick poor John with it. He said I should just tell you that he was mean. That he was mean and said you couldn't have it.
And I fully understand that. I write a rulebook and a player then doesn't have to be. Riot would give something out and there would be a mistake in it. Reddit invasion or something, and everybody would be like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's also like a little bit limiting Magic where you have like 900 pages card you print. That this card actually works with the. I actually like that there's.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. I mean, Magic's rule machinery is super complicated, and it's a lot. I mean, they're trying to have a set of rules that almost, I would say, axiomatically entail the things underneath it, right? So it's like geometry or something, right? Where these rules, you can derive the card effects inside of the rules, like.
Oh goodness!
You probably don't need anything that formal for a card game. I'm not a fan of the stack. If you're curious, the stack is overrated.
Like a whole different video.
Yeah, that's a whole different video. Why Dave doesn't like the stack, but yeah.
like this topic. I think we've
Yes.
our discussion time was great to have.
Oh yeah.
Yes, thank
Learned
you
a
so
lot, I
much.
think.
Yeah.
Oh great.
Time. Also check out plinq for recipe.
Mhm.
Rock some games. Should mention that.
I'll tell you when I'm playing Bloodborne PvP.
Yeah.
Just
I'll
stream it.
announce so you could. Oh, I could stream it. I don't know if I'm any. I played so much Bloodborne PvP. You would not want to know how much.
Oof.
But that's another topic as well. All right. Well, thank you all for having me.
Yeah.
And I will talk. Oh, good. I will talk to you later.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.